Hidden crime stories. The Lindsay Clancy story. Patrick Clancy had been out getting dinner. January 24, 2023. Duxbury, Massachusetts. A Tuesday evening. He had stopped at a restaurant to pick up food for his family, and swung by a CVS for medicine for his daughter. He came home to a house that looked ordinary from the outside. He walked inside and found the bodies of his 3 children. Cora was 5 years old. Dawson was 3. Callan was 8 months old. After strangling her children, authorities say Lindsay Clancy attempted to kill herself. She jumped out of a second-floor window, which left her paralyzed. Patrick Clancy called 911. The call that was played for a jury in Plymouth Superior Court this week, just 3 days before this episode was recorded, has been described by everyone who heard it in that courtroom as one of the most devastating pieces of audio evidence ever played in a Massachusetts murder trial. He was the first witness called. "I never saw Lindsay harm the kids," he told jurors. His wife, the mother of his children, a woman he had known as devoted, warm, and completely loving toward the 3 small people they had made together. And a woman who, in the months before that Tuesday evening, had been in a freefall that almost everyone around her had failed to fully catch. In the months after the birth of her 3rd child, Lindsay Clancy's mental health collapsed. Manic, unable to sleep and stricken with thoughts of harming herself, she sought care from experts in post-pregnancy mood disorders, was put on multiple psychiatric medications, and when nothing worked, checked in to a psychiatric hospital. 19 days after she was discharged, she strangled her 3 children. 19 days. On Hidden Crime Stories, we walk through one of the most morally complex and emotionally devastating cases this channel has ever covered. This is not a story about a monster hiding behind a normal life. This is not a story about calculation or cruelty or a person who did not love their children. This is a story about a woman who loved her children, who sought help repeatedly and desperately, and who still, somehow, was not caught by any of the systems that should have caught her. And it is a story about 3 children who deserve to grow up. Cora, Dawson, Callan. Their names come first. Stay with me. Before January 24, 2023, the Clancy family looked like exactly what they were: an ordinary, loving family, navigating the beautiful and exhausting reality of raising 3 small children in a Boston suburb. By all accounts, the Clancys were a typical family raising 3 small children in a Boston suburb. Lindsay Clancy was 32 years old. She had grown up with a strong work ethic and a deep sense of purpose. She had trained as a nurse and had built a career as a labor and delivery nurse at Massachusetts General Hospital, one of the most prestigious medical institutions in the country. She worked as a former labor and delivery nurse at Massachusetts General Hospital. The specific irony of that professional background, a woman who had spent her career helping mothers bring children safely into the world, who understood medicine and patient care and the vulnerability of the postpartum period, and who then found herself consumed by a postpartum crisis that the system failed to adequately treat, is something that has not been lost on anyone who has followed this case. Patrick Clancy was a physical therapist. They had built a life together in Duxbury, a coastal Massachusetts community about 35 miles south of Boston. Their home was warm and child-centered. The defense described walls decorated with alphabet letters, colors, and cartoon characters, and a home filled with toys. Cora was 5, old enough to have opinions and preferences, and the particular personality of a child becoming herself. Dawson was 3. Callan had been in the world for just 8 months. The defense said jurors would hear testimony from family, friends, neighbors, and teachers about Clancy's devotion to her children. These children were loved, nurtured, and cared for, the defense attorney told jurors. She loved those children right up to the time of their death. That statement, "She loved those children right up to the time of their death," is the sentence that makes this case unlike almost anything else this channel has ever covered. Because it is almost certainly true, and it does not make what happened any less devastating. The timeline of Lindsay Clancy's mental health crisis in the months before January 2023 is, in many ways, the most important part of this story. Because it is not a story of hidden deterioration, it is not a story of a woman who suffered in secret while presenting a normal face to the world. It is a story of a woman who reached out, repeatedly, urgently, consistently, and whose reach was not met with what she needed. In the months after the birth of her third child, Lindsay Clancy's mental health collapsed. Manic, unable to sleep and stricken with thoughts of harming herself, she sought care from experts in post-pregnancy mood disorders, was put on multiple psychiatric medications, and when nothing worked, checked in to a psychiatric hospital. Postpartum psychosis is not postpartum depression. It is something categorically different, rarer, more severe, and more dangerous. Postpartum psychosis is the most severe postpartum psychiatric illness. Moms with the condition need inpatient mental health care, which can include involuntary hospitalization. Treatments include medications or electroconvulsive therapy. It can happen to anyone after giving birth, but the chances are higher for people with certain mental health conditions. About half of people with postpartum psychosis have a previous history of psychiatric problems, and the most common risk factor associated with the condition is bipolar affective disorder, which causes extreme mood swings. Her lawyer said she also had bipolar disorder and that antidepressants prescribed after the birth of her third child worsened her condition. This is a critical detail. Antidepressants prescribed to a patient with undiagnosed or undertreated bipolar disorder can, in certain cases, destabilize mood rather than stabilize it. A well-documented risk in psychiatric medicine that the defense argued was central to what happened to Lindsay Clancy. She was not simply undertreated. She may have been, in a specific and medically meaningful sense, mistreated. She was hospitalized. She was discharged. 19 days later, her children were dead. Experts say, getting help early increases the odds of a good outcome. The help Lindsay Clancy got was not enough. Whether it was too little, too late, or fundamentally misdirected, that is the question at the heart of this trial. The prosecution sees it differently. Prosecutor Shannon Buckingham argued Clancy acted intentionally, rationally, and swiftly, and bears full responsibility for the deaths. This was not a woman in the throes of psychosis, Buckingham said. This is not a public debate about women's mental health and how the medical system treats women. This case is about this defendant, Lindsay Clancy. Two completely different pictures of the same woman. Two completely different frameworks for understanding what happened in that house on January 24, 2023. And 12 jurors sitting in Plymouth Superior Court right now, as this episode is being recorded, trying to decide which one is true. Patrick Clancy left the house that Tuesday evening to pick up dinner and medicine for his daughter. What happened while he was gone is established in the evidence and in Lindsay Clancy's own account. Given to investigators after she survived her jump from the second-floor window. She strangled Cora, 5 years old. She strangled Dawson, 3 years old. She strangled Callan, 8 months old. Then she went to the window. She jumped out of a second-floor window, which left her paralyzed. She did not die. She was found alongside her children, critically injured, and rushed to the hospital. She has been in a wheelchair since that night. Patrick Clancy came home. He found his children. He called 911. The recording of that call, played for the jury 3 days ago in Plymouth Superior Court, has been described by courtroom observers as almost impossible to sit through. A father's voice, an ordinary Tuesday evening, a house full of things that belonged to small children who were no longer alive. The assistant district attorney questioned the manager of a CVS pharmacy where Patrick Clancy bought medicine for his daughter and the hostess from a restaurant where he picked up dinner. These witnesses placed him away from the house during the time of the killings, establishing the timeline, confirming that Patrick Clancy had no knowledge of what was happening while he was running errands, and making undeniable the absolute ordinariness of the evening that preceded the worst thing he would ever come home to. Lindsay Clancy was charged with 3 counts of murder and 3 counts of strangulation. She has pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. If convicted of murder, Clancy faces life in prison without parole. Before we go any further, I want to pause for just a moment. This is the most morally complex episode we have ever produced on this channel. There are no easy answers here. There is no simple villain. There are 3 children who are gone and a system that failed them, and a woman whose trial is happening right now as you watch this. If this story is making you think, if it is sitting with you in a way that is hard to name, take 5 seconds and subscribe to Hidden Crime Stories. We will be covering this trial as it develops. We will bring you the verdict when it comes, and we have more stories like this coming that your feed cannot afford to miss. Subscribe right now, and let's keep going. Because the legal and moral questions at the center of this trial are ones that every single person watching needs to understand. The trial of Lindsay Clancy opened on July 27, 2026, just 3 days before this episode was recorded. Opening statements presented two completely different portraits of the same woman, and both of those portraits were drawn from the same set of facts. Lindsay Clancy's lawyer, Kevin Reddington, said she had postpartum psychosis, a rare mental illness linked to the stress, sleep deprivation, and hormonal changes that follow childbirth. He said she also had bipolar disorder and that antidepressants prescribed after the birth of her third child worsened her condition. She loved those children right up to the time of their death, Reddington told jurors. The defense is asking the jury to understand Lindsay Clancy as a woman who was medically unwell, not in a vague general sense, but in a specific, documented, clinically severe way, and who committed acts that she would never have committed if the system treating her had caught her in time. Prosecutor Shannon Buckingham argued that Clancy acted intentionally, rationally, and swiftly, and bore full responsibility for the deaths. This was not a woman in the throes of psychosis, Buckingham said, urging jurors to focus on Clancy's actions rather than broader questions about maternal mental health. The prosecution's portrait is of a woman who, whatever her mental health history, made deliberate choices on the night of January 24th, who acted with intention, who bears full criminal responsibility for the deaths of her children, regardless of the circumstances that preceded them. Both of those portraits contain truth. That is what makes this case so extraordinarily difficult. Though most people with postpartum psychosis don't harm their children, mothers with severe cases may try to do so, and also may try to harm themselves. Women who kill their children in the throes of this medical illness, postpartum psychosis, are seriously and profoundly mentally ill. They are not evil, said Dr. Catherine Berndorf, the CEO and founder of the Motherhood Center in New York City. To me, it's illness until proven otherwise. The fact that we consider it criminal until proven otherwise is problematic. The legal framework the defense is working within, the insanity defense, is one of the most demanding standards in American criminal law. It requires demonstrating not just that the defendant had a mental illness, but that the illness was so severe at the time of the crime that she did not understand the nature or wrongfulness of her actions. That is an extraordinarily high bar. And the prosecution's argument that Lindsay Clancy acted intentionally and rationally is not without evidentiary support. The question of what intentional means when the person acting is in the grip of a psychotic break is something that legal and psychiatric experts have been arguing about for decades without reaching a clean consensus. The jury in Plymouth Superior Court will be asked to reach one anyway. As of today, July 30, 2026, that verdict has not yet been returned. The trial is ongoing. Patrick Clancy has testified. The 911 call has been played. More witnesses are expected. The verdict could come in days, or it could take weeks. This channel will cover it when it does. I want to step back from the specifics of the legal proceedings for a moment, because this trial is about more than what happened in one house in Duxbury on one January evening. The criminal prosecution of acts stemming from postpartum mental illness further reinforces the notion that such acts are shameful moral failures and not the tragic results of a clinical diagnosis. That sentence, from an opinion piece written about this case this week, cuts to the heart of the broader conversation this trial has ignited. Awareness of postpartum psychosis has grown since the Yates case, but maternal mental health advocates said it's rarely considered in criminal prosecutions. Illinois is the only state with a law allowing for undiagnosed or untreated postpartum depression or postpartum psychosis to be a mitigating factor in sentencing. The Andrea Yates case, which this channel may cover in a future episode, established the legal and public framework within which the Lindsay Clancy case is now being understood. In 2001, Andrea Yates drowned her 5 children in a bathtub in Houston, Texas, while in the grip of severe postpartum psychosis. She was initially convicted of murder. That conviction was overturned. She was retried, found not guilty by reason of insanity, and committed to a psychiatric facility where she remains today. The Yates case changed public understanding of postpartum psychosis. It did not change the law in most states. And 25 years later, a jury in Massachusetts is being asked to grapple with the same fundamental question. When a severe mental illness removes a person's capacity to understand what they are doing, does the criminal justice system, with its framework of intent and responsibility, have the right tools to respond? Just as we lock up people who steal baby formula instead of reckoning with the poverty driving their behavior, we consistently focus on punishing those who commit crimes of violence due to mental illness when we could be addressing the obstacles to them getting care. Lindsay Clancy sought help. She was hospitalized, she was discharged. The system decided, 19 days before her children died, that she was well enough to go home. That decision, made by mental health professionals within the constraints of the system they were operating in, is something that will not be on trial in Plymouth Superior Court. Lindsay Clancy is. Whether those two things should be separated is the question that this case leaves open long after any verdict has been reached. Before my final thoughts, I want to speak to you directly. This episode is different from almost anything we have covered on this channel. The trial is happening right now. The verdict has not been returned. And the questions this case raises, about mental health, about the systems that are supposed to catch people before they reach a breaking point, about how we balance accountability with compassion, do not have clean answers. If this story moved you, please leave a comment. Tell me what you think. Tell me where you stand on the question of criminal responsibility and mental illness. Your comments shape this conversation. And subscribe right now, because when this verdict comes in, we will be here to cover it immediately and fully. Now, here is what I want you to carry from this one. Cora Clancy was 5 years old. Dawson Clancy was 3. Callan Clancy was 8 months old. I want to say their names and hold them there for a moment, because in a case where the legal, medical, and moral debate is so loud and so complex, it is possible for the children themselves to get lost in the argument. They should not get lost. They are the reason any of these matters. 3 children who were, by every account from the people who knew this family, deeply loved, who lived in a house with alphabet letters on the walls and toys on the floor, who had a mother who had spent her professional life helping other mothers bring children safely into the world, who had no reason to fear the person who was supposed to protect them most. They are gone, and nothing about the outcome of this trial, no verdict, no sentence, no legal determination about criminal responsibility, changes that. Now, here is what I want you to carry. The Lindsay Clancy case is asking America a question that it has been avoiding since the Andrea Yates case more than 2 decades ago. What do we do when a person is both a victim of a system that failed them and the cause of a harm that can never be undone? Lindsay Clancy sought help. 4 months of psychiatric care, multiple medications, a hospitalization. She raised her hand again and again and said, "I am not okay." And the system that received that information made a determination, 19 days before her children died, that she was okay enough to go home. There is no version of this story where that determination was not catastrophically wrong. Whether Lindsay Clancy bears criminal responsibility for what she did in the grip of the illness that followed, whether the insanity defense applies, whether the jury finds intentionality within psychosis, is something 12 people in Plymouth, Massachusetts are currently deciding. But the question of whether the mental health system that treated her and discharged her bears any form of responsibility, that question is not being decided by anyone right now. It is sitting outside the courthouse, unaddressed, in the same place it sat after Andrea Yates, after every case like this one that the system has processed as a criminal matter and then moved on from. Experts say getting help early increases the odds of a good outcome. Lindsay Clancy got help. She just didn't get enough of it, or the right kind, or soon enough, or for long enough. Here is what this case asks of every person watching. If someone in your life, a new mother, a partner, a sister, a friend, is showing signs of extreme psychological distress in the weeks and months after giving birth, do not wait for them to ask for help again. Do not assume that because they sought help once the problem is being managed. Do not accept a discharge from a psychiatric facility as a guarantee that the crisis has passed. Stay close. Ask specific questions. Bring people in. Make noise if the noise needs to be made. The postpartum period is one of the most vulnerable times in a person's life. Most people move through it without crisis. But for the small number who don't, for the people in the grip of something as severe and as real as postpartum psychosis, The gap between getting enough help and not getting enough help can be the difference between a family intact and a family destroyed. Cora Clancy was 5 years old. Dawson was 3. Callan was 8 months old. They deserved the chance to grow up. And the most important thing any of us can do to honor that is to make sure that the next mother in crisis does not fall through the same gaps that Lindsay Clancy fell through. Before the breaking point, not after.